Hi, I'm Gary Cole, and you're listening to The Football Coaching Life, a podcast brought to you by Football Coaches Australia and Making Media, the podcast professionals. This podcast tells the story of Australia's men and women, the coaches that we entrust to help develop our players and our teams. We want to maximise the potential in those players, and that's a great segue into today's guest, Dr. Craig Duncan. In the good old days would have been a sports scientist, but today Craig is a human performance specialist, scientist, whatever we call it. We've called him a few things. I think I used to call him the mad professor at Sydney FC when we worked together for a while. Craig is recognisable as one of our best known sports scientists in the background of sport. Worked with Sydney FC, won a championship there, worked with West Sydney Wanderers, won an Asian Champions League there, worked with Ange and the Socceroos, won an Asian Cup there, worked with the New South Wales State of Origin Rugby League team, won a championship there, first one for 9 years, and is working as a consultant, worked with Iran, and I think made the semi-finals of the 2019 Asia Cup. So well-renowned, well-known, and a really, really good human being. So welcome to the podcast, Dr. Craig.
Hi, Gaz. How are you? And thanks for that lovely introduction.
You deserve it, mate. We really, really appreciate it. This is a first. Obviously, this podcast is about football coaches, and that means coaches that are involved in football. Initially, for me, that was all head coaches, and then in this wonderful thing that came to me a few weeks ago, we went, there's actually goalkeeping coaches, and there's strength and conditioning coaches, and there's human performance specialists. So maybe let's start there. What is human performance management, specialising science? How do you frame your life? Because you are a coach, I think. Would we agree that you're a coach?
Yeah, look, I think initially I started out, wanting to make players, faster, stronger, fitter as much as possible to give them the best opportunity to maximize their potential. And then I think over time, I realized that, human performance is very holistic. So it's much more than that. It's there's a psychological and a physiological component to what we do. I think I encapsulate what I do very much that, I'm at service to the coach and the players. And I see my job is to give the coach and the coaching staff a well prepared player so they can work their magic. That's how I see it. Yeah. So if I think of the coach being the artist, the painter, I want to give him or her a very fine landscape to be able to achieve the magic with that art that they're going to create. Yeah. So that's how I see my job.
Oh, thanks. It's a great explanation. Craig, you're built like a broom handle. You still run. I know you like. I've seen more fat on a butcher's pencil, as a wise man once said. Did you play football? I know you love, like me, you love football. You love basketball. Did you play football?
Yeah, very much. That was the game I played. I was a goalkeeper, and that's why you've always scared me. And I had a decent junior career, played for New South Wales through my juniors, and then got to 16 and 17 and made my first grade debut in the state league. And I'd love to say what so many people say, that an injury stopped me having this wonderful career, but the fact was I just wasn't good enough, and psychologically I wasn't strong enough to continue. So that was that, but still enjoy the game, and really thought, okay, well, how can I be involved in sport if it's not going to be as an athlete? Yeah. And the way to do that is to either be a coach, or in my case, it was to study and to be a sports scientist.
Yeah. So unlike the football coaches that work on the park with the players, instead of with machinery and feedback mechanisms and gyms, you go to university first. You need essentially a university degree to be able to get into sports science in elite sport?
Yeah, look, I think there's some people that have not done that, and they've gone through another channel. I think in my place, yes, I find that you need that basis and that education to be able to do this, a holistic job very well. However, I do see my work now has changed over the years. I'm not one that thinks a person such as like a strength and conditioning coach or a fitness coach should really be too much on the pitch doing the work. I think that's you might have a second assistant coach that has an interest in the conditioning side of things, and they might be the ones that I work with to actually put out the best stuff on the field. But my work is behind the scenes in that respect.
Okay. How did you go to university to get into coaching, or were you on that pathway of education in the area of sports science, and then got into the football coaching side of this?
Yeah, look, I think I went to university because I just had a real interest in human performance.
Yeah.
And that has stayed to this day. Whether that was with athletes, whether it was with older people, younger people, or whatever, I wanted to see people be physiologically and psychologically the best they could be. And so that's why an initial undergraduate degree in sports science, sport and exercise science, is a good way to do that, because it gives you the foundations. Then from there I did postgraduate work, and I was working at university, and then I was delving into some research in football, and then I just got right into it in respect to working day to day, with the athletes, and that's over the years, probably the last 20 years plus. That's what I've been doing. I still have an academic position at the Australian Catholic University, where I'm a senior lecturer, and then the consulting work we do.
Many strings to your bow today, Doc.
Yeah, I have I like to. I think by delving into different areas, and I have a great interest in leadership and just this whole concept of human performance in general. It makes me better in football as well, because you just have a wider view. I think sometimes we can get very narrow focused, and if we're not delving out into other areas, other sports as well, and how is our sport going to really press?
Yeah, I think we might have had a little technical hiccup there. Sydney FC, your first opportunity in the Hyundai A-League?
Yes, that's what I'd been doing, some consulting work in the NPL with Sydney Olympic, and then I had an academic position, so I didn't really want to go full time into something. But the challenge came up to work with Sydney FC after they hadn't had a great year the year previous to when I came in, and so the opportunity came up, and I met with them, and we took that on back in 2009-10.
How important to your journey was that first opportunity?
I think it was really important, because it took me back from being in an academic position where you think, okay, things can work one way, and then getting and actually seeing it firsthand. That I think I learned a lot back in 2009-10. Dealing with the coaches, dealing with the players, dealing with and bringing in a lot of new stuff that hadn't been really done, I suppose, before, and seeing, okay, how can that best be done in the environment that we're in. So it was a good opportunity, and it helped too that we won that year.
yeah, winning is always a good thing. So in your time at Sydney FC, you would have started with Vladislav Levichka?
Yes, I actually started when he first came in. So it was a bit of a change then, and he'd come in, and Tony Popovic was assistant coach, and Papa was a great support to the work that we were trying to bring in. He was a great support, and had fabulous buy-in from the players such as John Aloisi, Terry McFlynn, Steve Corica, and so it was a really good opportunity. Dave Mason was there at the time, so had wonderful support, and Vicha and was just a very good human, and a very very good person. So it was a good opportunity.
Through that time, Vladislav transitioned into Crookie for unfortunately only a short period of time, and then that into Frank Farina. I can't remember exactly when was that the three coaches you had at Sydney FC? Yeah,
I think we had Steve Corica for a little while after Crookie, but it was very much the major coach that I had was Vicha, into Ian, and I'd worked with Crookie before because he'd been an assistant in the past, and I knew him well. Steve I'd had as a player and had been an assistant, and then Frank came in, I think late in 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm wondering on the coaching in general changes depending on who's at the helm. In our game, quite often, if a head coach changes, they will, particularly at the elite end of the game, they will bring in their support team and structure. How did that, and we expect that perhaps when people change clubs, but you were employed by Sydney FC, Vidislav brings you in to be a part of that, then he goes, Crookie comes, he goes, Frank Farina comes in. How do people in that support staff role, how do you manage through that process?
Look, it's a difficult process, and I suppose as my career's gone on, I really advise clubs to be very smart during this process. I've got no problem with coaches bringing in people.
Yeah.
I really don't. To this day, if you want to bring them in and you've known that person a long period of time, that is okay. However, my concern with that is, and I've seen this on multiple occasions, coaches have people that they bring in because they've known them a long period of time.
Yeah.
However, that doesn't necessarily mean that those people are, let me say, the best at their job.
Yep.
Okay. And so, but I see that as okay, because it might be there for a reason, that they know how I work and that sort of stuff. I think from a club, you get to be very careful with that scenario. The reason being is I've never seen a coach pay the wages of a player.
Yeah.
So, and most of the time when a coach brings in staff, they don't go through any interview process or vetting process.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm coming in. It's a non-negotiable that these people come in.
Yeah.
I advocate that a club should have a surveillance system around that, meaning that they should have their own people that they know that are at a high competence level to be in there to advise the coach coming in and to protect their assets, because remember, players are assets.
Absolutely.
Now, I've got no problem if I was working with a club and then that coach brings in a fitness coach and this has happened to me on multiple occasions, and you get sidelined a bit and your job changes. No issue with that at all. That's okay. However, this where competent people are then put out, and then who's looking after the asset?
Yeah.
And there's been a number of times I've been in this situation, and I could show you data of where the assets have been compromised by training philosophies that are not based on sound scientific evidence.
Yeah.
That's all okay if a club wants to operate like that, but I don't think that's good business.
Yeah.
I've always found it interesting because I'm a very loyal person, and I've seen situations where coaches have brought people in that think they don't know me, okay, but I can see that the people that they've brought in, it's basically just becomes an echo chamber, and they're there because they're attached to that coach.
Yep.
And they'll get the next gig because of that coach, but they might not necessarily be competent at what they do, and the coach doesn't realize it.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult, and if you've got a lot of coaches listening to this and a lot of young coaches, surround yourself with loyalty. I remember I had a great conversation with a very famous coach in another sport, and I was consulting them, and he said, and I said to him, you know what, there's some problems with your staff. Basically they're somewhat incompetent, to put it nicely, and the way that they're conducting themselves is actually killing you as a coach. And he said, yes, Craig, but I've got to reward loyalty.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, that's okay, but put them in positions where it's not going to compromise the performance of the players and the performance of you ultimately. So I think as a coach, you've got to be very, very aware of that. No problem with you bringing in people that you know and trust. The other thing is, if I was advising a club how to do that, I would say, okay, you've got a coach coming in. He wants to bring his own staff. I would say give them a fee and the coach pays them.
Yeah.
Because if they're not going to go through an interview process, and a coach comes in saying it's a non-negotiable, like even if a coach came in and said it's a non-negotiable, I have Craig Duncan here.
Yeah.
Well, how about you've got someone better than Craig Duncan already here? Why am I going to do this?
Yeah.
And say, okay, well, if I'm going to pay you $3 million out of your salary, you pay Craig Duncan if you want him that much. I think coaches really need to. I think clubs really need to rethink how they operate in this section.
Yeah. I don't know if that's unique to football, but it's certainly still an old-fashioned form of hiring and firing, and particularly in the world of, marginal, in often cases, marginal differences in the world of high performance, where, people are looking to get really small gains to make an overall difference. And I guess that is because invariably it's loyalty, and the loyalty is based on trust over a period of time. I think the other danger in there that came to mind when I was listening to you talking is if you surround yourself with everyone, with a whole group of people that always agree with you, it's not exactly a great environment for growth, is it?
Look, I think it's one of the major problems that I've seen with coaches. And again, if you're listening to this as a coach, I would say to you, if you've got an echo chamber around you, to satisfy your own ego, you've got to check in with your ego. And if you want everyone to agree with you, then you're not going to get to where you want to go. And I'd test them as well. I would test them. Say something one day that's completely ridiculous and see if they say it back to you or they actually challenge you. Because rather than an echo chamber, you want to surround yourself with a challenge network, and definitely people that you trust. Okay, and what I mean by a challenge network is, look, I have a group of friends, and you're one of them. I would put something out to them, and I know they got my best interests at heart, but they're going to tell me how it is rather than just agree with whatever I say. So if you're a coach and you want to test your staff, okay, to see what you've got there, if you've created an echo chamber or if you're actually created with a mindset take you and your team to a better level. Throw something out there and see what they come back with, and then you'll know what you've got.
Changing track a little bit, Craig, on your journey you've worked with the coaches we mentioned at Sydney FC, you worked with Popper and achieved a remarkable outcome for Australian football, winning that the Australian Champions League. You then worked with Ange and the Socceroos in the Asian Cup. You worked with Bert Marwick at the World Cup. There's a whole bunch of different coaches there. There's a whole bunch of different egos there, different people that want to get on and do things. Which head coach has had the most impact on you and the way you do your job, and why?
I think I've learnt from all of them. Look, I had a long relationship with Tony Popovich, and that was really enjoyable. I learnt so much off him. Of how to conduct myself around teams and with players and what could work, and I might have a starry-eyed idea from a sports science perspective, but he would bring it back into context as a player. So he was so instrumental in really taking that next step to really bring a scientific approach into things that were done. So he had a great impact on what we did. Ange was wonderful to work with as well. Look, I think Ange, from a leadership perspective, was just outstanding. The way he conducts himself, highly intelligent, well-read. Again, he just inspired you to do your very, very best. I always knew that I would produce reports and that he would always go over them. And read them, point by point, as Popper would as well. And I just knew Ange was over there. And then discussions with him actually got me to stretch myself to create, new algorithms or different things to give him the service that he required. So that was an absolute joy to work with Ange. I feel very lucky about that. Working with Bert van Marwijk and the Dutch crew was, again, super enjoyable. Cultural differences and understanding that. John Aloisi I can't speak higher enough of John Aloisi when we were consulting into Brisbane Roar, Alan Stajic, all these people. But I think Carlos Queiroz working with Iran, that was that was special because with his history that he had, just a fantastic man as well as all the people that I've mentioned. But he had stories to tell, and the way he conducted himself, and the way he inspired this team, and everything. That was a fantastic experience as well. So I've been really fortunate, Gaz. Des Hasler in another sport.
Yeah.
So I think I've learnt from every coach, and that's helped me really to be better. But ultimately, it doesn't matter which coach I work with. My job is to serve them, to find out what they need, what they want, not to bring in my philosophy and this is the way it's done. No, it's about understanding and interviewing them to see where I can make a difference to help them.
So on that's a great little segue here. I know when we were at Sydney FC, you also, one of the many tasks that you fulfilled there, you're also involved in game analysis, which is not necessarily the bent of most sports scientists, so a little bit different. Obviously, you need to have an understanding of the game. Do you think that the more experienced the coach, the clearer they are on what they want from you? Because the way I see sports science today and analysis and the advancement of technology, that maybe sports science used to be able to produce that, and today it's like the data could be all consuming. I went to a sports technology convention down here in Melbourne a couple of years ago, and there was this game analysis tool that could produce an analysis of a game that was 230 pages long. And I've never met a coach yet that could actually would be remotely interested in a report that was 230 pages long, because they've got limited amount of time. And my guess is that those, particularly the experienced ones, are going to have a very good understanding about, one, how they want to play, how they want to go about doing that, and three, what information that they need from you to enable that process to happen. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, Gaz, you raise a good point, and I don't know if you're trying to get me into trouble or not, but look, and I think what should we call it? The rise of the analyst.
Yeah.
Okay, and I would then be very. Yeah, I think I could have a subtitle to that, but I think we need to be very, very careful. I know and understand data extremely well.
Yeah.
I believe that most coaches, particularly in a lot of the work I do, they want to know one thing: are my players good to go, or are they not good to go? And if you see the reports that I compile, what they come down to at the end of, I believe that data drives insight, and insight drives intelligence. My job is to give intelligence, and you know what? That intelligence could be, Gaz, we're good to go. That's it.
Yeah.
This is what you've got for training. We're good to go. We're in our optimal performance zone. We're okay, or we're not. That's what it comes down to. My concern is that a lot of people produce wonderful sheets of data. Now, can I say, in respect to that data, we don't need a person on site to do that. Some of the companies are very good at doing this. Like, there's a company I'm involved in. They're a world leader, and they produce fantastic reports. They do it, okay? And then it's up to the analyst to probably take all that information down, like you said, the 25 pages of that report, and bring it down to a point about what are the key things. And it's interesting you go back to Sydney FC. When I was at Sydney FC, and when I came in, I was the strength and conditioning coach, the fitness coach, the sports scientist, the analyst. I did the nutrition. I did this. And what I did was I had external other people that I could go to that were specialists in that area. And that was one wage. Okay. Now, how much money are we spending, and are we getting a better service? And particularly with cost cutting, and the part of my company, what we do is we outsource a lot of this. And I know what we can do. And to give superior intelligence rather than the analyst, who, by the way, I think that person 100% should be a coach.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's where our up and coming coaches, isn't a coach an analyst?
Well,
Shouldn't a coach be an
would think
analyst?
so. Yeah.
Yeah, and so rather than having someone sitting outside that, I think I can teach you the technology. The technology is not tough. You should then know what the coach requires, what the game plan is, and to produce the data that's required.
Yeah.
Look, if you do not use the data, don't collect it. You know, and I think people get very fancy and about it, and there's an, you know what they say, if you confuse people with a whole lot of numbers, then it looks like you're really employable, doesn't it?
Well, that's certainly a part of it. My guess there is the longer that you've been in the role of a head coaching job, the clearer you are likely to be about what information, what data is important to you. As you summed up, are we good to go? It could be that simple. The challenge might be for a new coach. One of the fantastic things about the A-League this year, and the COVID, all the things that's happened with COVID, we've seen an increase in the number of young Australian coaches in charge for the first time in teams. That's been a blessing with the players because they know a lot of the young Australian players and have given more youngsters a chance. What they don't have is a whole bunch of head coaching experience. So they come in and can be bombarded with the amount of information available. And probably the bigger the club, the more money it's got, the more information they can be bombarded with. Whereas you flip that and you go to Carlos Queiroz or Ange Postecoglou or Tony Popovic, my guess is when you have that first interaction with them and they sit down, they can be a lot more specific about the information that they require, and then the ego of what we can all do doesn't get in the way of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And look, I'm fortunate. Brisbane Roar is one of our clients, so I've had the opportunity to work with a really good young Australian coach in Warren Moon.
Yeah.
And what I love about Warren is that he's open to feedback.
Yeah.
And that's really important. No one is expected to know how he wants to play the game, but gee, he's been so open to feedback and will adjust accordingly. At the end of the day, I would give feedback, and staff, that work with me up there would give feedback.
Yeah.
But it's the coach's decision at the end of the day. But what I like is that he is open to that. I think one of the things with young coaches coming in, I'm very much about mentorship. I think is imperative. Like I think if someone like yourself would be a wonderful mentor to a young coach. There's no doubt about that. I am pleading with young coaches to leave your ego at the door and to realize that you can really learn off people.
Yeah.
And it mightn't be things about how to play the game. It mightn't be things about that, but you've got someone like a Gary Cole just to say, okay, this is okay. All right, we've had a couple of losses. Have you had a look at this? Or you've had a look at that? Just to be there to have that conversation. Throughout history, successful people have had mentors.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we go way back, Plato had Socrates, Aristotle had Plato. It's okay, guys, to say, oh, I learn off someone else.
Yeah.
That's what we want to do. It's not they're not there to take your job. They're there just to be a support, and sometimes you just need that. And what I find, what a young coaches sometimes have is they have inexperienced assistants. Inexperienced coach with inexperienced assistants, where sometimes you just need a little bit of experience in there just to help everyone along.
Yeah. No, look, I couldn't agree more there. I was having coffee with another good friend, Ernie Merrick, the other day. And I don't think Ernie expects to coach in the A-League again, but the conversation that we had was, would you be willing with a young coach? And I was sat there thinking, to have someone like Ernie Merrick that's been there, probably made every mistake that a coach could make, has come through the other side. Some of those mistakes would have cost him jobs on the journey, but has learned how to maximise the potential in players, can play a great brand of attacking football. To have someone like that as a consultant or a part-time member of staff or just a friend on the end of the phone that can answer some of those questions, what a wonderful gift that would be.
Oh, absolutely. And if you look at Ernie, what a lot of people forget is he had that experience with the youth too, didn't he? At
Absolutely.
VIS originally.
Yeah.
He actually has a sports science background.
He knows.
And so he brought a lot of that in. He's had incredible experience. I'm saddened to think that he thinks he won't coach in the A-League. I hope that's because he doesn't want to. But what a fabulous person to have there, and just to help people. And there's a number of those people in the game that could really be very, very valuable. And I think we don't put enough emphasis on mentorship. No. Everyone needs a mentor, or everyone needs that challenge network to be there just to ask those questions when it's tough. Because let's face it, the mental health of coaches is a real concern to me.
Yeah. No, absolutely. We discussed that particular issue on this podcast a bit. The athlete welfare has been front and centre for a growing number of years now, but you just do not hear the mental health of coaches mentioned at all. Who cares for the carers, essentially? That's such an important part of this, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something that I've had great interest in later this part of my career. We're working with coaches on that and looking after them. We started monitoring coaches and staff because as a consultant, life is quite good. You get to go around to places and see, but the guys on the ground day in, day out, it's a tough role.
Yeah.
Okay. And they bleed for the club. They're the first in, the last out, and that sort of stuff. And if results aren't going their way, it's devastating. So we need to actually do this. So many coaches don't get the right amount of sleep. Their health isn't good. You and I both know coaches that have had mental health issues. Yeah. The number of marriage breakups in high performance sport is incredible. We need to focus on this. But even, if you think, all right, that's nice and warm and fuzzy, and Gaz and Craig are talking about that. Okay, forget that. Let's go from a performance perspective. Okay, if you want your coach to perform to the best, have people looking after them, because their decision making will not be on point, if they're not well themselves.
Yeah.
If they're not getting physical activity, if they're not eating well, if they're not sleeping well. If you're just talking about performance, it'll be compromised if they're not being looked after.
Yeah. No, amen. Love that.
Well, you look, as I'll go on, because I'm very fond of your other favorite sport, but basketball, watching the NBA, you look at that and you go, okay, like the NBA is an interesting one because sleep deprivation is a major part of it.
Yeah.
But then it could come down to the last 2 minutes where you've got 7 or 8 timeouts, and that's real coaching.
Oh yeah.
Right? That's high-end coaching. What's your frame? You've got to have tactics during that game to realize, am I going to be right to make clear decisions in the last couple of minutes of that game?
Yeah. No, really like that, Craig. You're listening to The Football Coaching Life, a podcast brought to you by Football Coaches Australia and Making Media, the podcast professionals. Today's guest is Dr. Craig Duncan, human performance master. I'm not quite sure what I was going to call you then, Doc, but we got it out in the end. We mentioned mentoring before. Have you had a mentor in your role?
Oh, I think I've had a number of people that I can really go to in respect to how I'm conducting myself, and what I'm thinking, about. I've got a network of people, like a challenge network, that have no problem telling me what they think of me.
Yep.
And when I'm on point or when I'm not. So as much as sometimes I'm very focused on my ego not getting out of control, I've got great people that they're very happy to tell me how it is. So I've got a couple of key people I really go to and run things by before I go out and do things.
with the head coaches, I've asked them about the mentoring or the learning they've got outside of football from other sports. I don't have to say that because the world of sports science is huge, and because it's I guess begins in academia as well. There's a lot of sharing of information, so we know that sharing across sports goes on. You're nodding there, so I know that you have, or you are already doing it. To be more specific to football, how do you go into sports science land and that cavern of information that's available, and bring that back and say, okay, how do we make this specific for football? How do we make it specific for football at this club or this national team at this point in time?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question.
Thank you.
So at the university I work at, so there's a number of outstanding academics that mightn't work in sport, but so my people that would work with me, like maybe heat is a huge thing.
Yeah.
All right, so I understand the basics of a lot of things, but if I want to go to that next level, and with the Australian national team, we're often playing in enormous heat. Okay, so what do? Okay, I go to a specialist that researches in that area. Okay, what is the best case scenario? I'll run things by him, and then he'll come back to me and go, okay, we could look at this, and this. It's like when we did the trip to Honduras, and you have all the travel and all that sort of stuff, and the best way to do it. So I will have the overall goal of what I think needs to be done, but then I go into people that live their life in the circadian rhythm, in sleep, in the whole field of chronobiology, travel, and how to conduct that, time change, humidity, how to work inside that sort of stuff, and then I put it all together and bring it back. I think I've been successful because I know my limitations. I don't try and do it all, and I have a very good network of people that I'm very happy to go for just to confirm what I want. Like, I'll give you an example. Algorithm, and my data knowledge is okay, and I can get by, but I have an expert in maths. That's all he does in maths, and my word to him is, okay, I'm thinking of doing X, Y, and Z. I want you to tell me from a maths perspective, if I got up in front of you, that you wouldn't look at me and laugh. That's what I want. I just don't want to be laughed at. I want to make sure, because I know I can take this anyway and put it in front of a football community, and they'll go, oh, that's really cool. But what I want you to tell me is this ridiculous? So that's how I work.
Yeah.
I try and keep things very simple, but I surround myself with the best possible people. An interesting one, getting back to basketball, is in 2019, I got to spend some great time viewing what the NBA were doing. And I was watching training one day, and they have this thing where, they have multiple coaches, where each coach would have 3 or 4 players, and they would do this thing, and they called it their daily vitamin. They call it their vitamin, where different players would focus on different things that were imperative to their game, and then that coach was the one that looked after them doing that. So it was like a coach inside a team situation. I do not understand why that doesn't, then I tried to think, this would work perfectly in football. Like, you come back and, you're a striker, guys, so you're on the coaching staff, that you work every day for 10 to 15 minutes with these players on something specific. And then the head coach can go, okay, guys, how are those guys going? Or how are those girls going? Why we do not do this in football, I will never know. We sometimes do it in an ad hoc way. Okay, you go and do extras and you do this. But, in basketball, it's very strategic. Every day there's 10 to 15 minutes with that one coach, with that 4 to 5 players. And you know what else that does is, a lot of players in a 25-person squad can get lost, all right? Absolutely. Because they don't want to speak to the head coach. But if they have these assistants, that's their way in, and then the assistant works to the head coach. So that's an area where I think 100% I would advise, make use of your assistants. I don't really understand why we have so many staff these days, and what are they doing?
Good question. I don't know.
But particularly, guys, I mean, you were a football director, so I know you would have been asking those questions, but I'd be going, hang on, particularly now in the A-League, where we're looking at costs and that sort of stuff. I'm thinking, okay, where did it go where we had, the coach and the assistant and the second assistant and the analyst and then the sports scientist and then the strength and conditioning coach, rather than looking at this and going, okay, can I get better, really top level people, or just make use of these people in a better way?
Yeah.
I'm sorry if that offends anyone out there, but I'm looking at it from a business perspective, going, okay, are we getting the biggest bang for our buck with what we're actually putting out there?
Yeah. No, I think that's a terrific point. And you would think that, well, not think, you don't have to think, COVID has had an impact. People have had to trim, hard to do football from home via a Zoom conference, albeit a lot of the interaction has happened that way. But clubs have cut coaches. Unfortunately, backroom staff have been some of the easiest to get rid of in clubland, as we know, from assistant coaches to sports scientists and the works. But hopefully that does give us, Craig, a time where, it enables to reset and people say, and you also wonder again then how a club determines, we're a successful club, we've got more money, we can do a whole bunch of things, but who's making the decision on what things are important to this club right now and the way we want to play football? Because, for me, it becomes about what we want to do now. You worked with Ange on a World Cup qualifying campaign. There were some stats about the number of days, etc., and there was the charting of an aeroplane. Now you go,
two actually. We did it from Syria. We played Syria, and I think we did that back from Malaysia, and then of course the Honduras trip, which was enormous. Yeah,
and you go, that I can't even begin to imagine what it costs to hire a jet, even if Qantas is one of your sponsors. But I'm going to say that's a significant investment. But I think most people would say, you know what, for the way we want to play football, how important recovery is for us to do these things between this time here and the next time we kick off, to be at our maximum potential by the time we kick off again, then that's a wonderful investment. So,
well, yeah, and you have to, pitch that idea, and you have to, to complete reports on that and to say why, and I'm sure it might have cost $1 million, but qualifying for the World Cup probably makes you $15 million plus the entire ramifications for our sport if we didn't make the World Cup. They're pretty enormous. Yeah. So it's fortunate we won that game.
Amen. Let's change track again. Craig, you have experienced a heart attack, and I'm going to get this right, spontaneous coronary artery dissection, which sounds like an artery came apart and started to bleed inside your body. That's obviously a huge thing for you. Must have been an incredible scare. You've been through times where a coach goes, you go, you lose your job. That's a time when resilience, friends, your mental health, all of that bundles up. Let's call it resilience, whatever way you like. I don't think it's arguable about whether coaches have to develop resilience. Is it learnable? Is it teachable? Is that something that in your role you think you can help players, or not just players, but more specifically for this podcast, that coaches can develop? Is it something you're born with? Is it a muscle that you can grow and develop?
No, I think it's actually something that we can develop, and it's about getting the right focus. And you and I both share. I'm inspired what you've been through in recent times, and that's real resilience. However, when health hits you right between the eyes, I'm sure you'd probably suggest, similar to me, what we were really focused on and what was really important to us was our family.
Absolutely.
And making sure that we were healthy for that. Now, in late 2000, oh no, it was early 2013 when this happened. I was very unhappy. I was at Sydney FC.
Yeah.
A new coaching regime had come in. It was a very difficult time. Nothing, I probably didn't handle it right. You'd been there, you weren't there. We were in a state of flux. It was really just an uncomfortable time.
Yeah.
And I remember coming home, being quite depressed and down about the entire situation. And how it happened, and you're right, a spontaneous coronary artery dissection is when an artery basically splits.
Yeah.
It happened while I was doing bench press, and
Wow.
you don't have feelings in your arteries. I was very lucky that it wasn't a major artery, otherwise I would have just dropped dead. But over the ensuing days, not really knowing what it was, and like you said, I run every day. I kept having a heart attack while I was running. And you talk about resilience or just being stupid. I would try and keep running, but 3 weeks in hospital, in intensive care, and some very frightening nights thinking this was it, teaches you more. Is it resilience or more, okay, let's put this all in perspective?
Yeah.
And this is what one of my missions in life really is to help people in professional sport or in whatever job they're in, is to go, okay, what's really important for you? I think we've lost the balance of life. And particularly in sport, we're really passionate about what we do.
Yeah.
Okay. And I love, my life. I don't know where it ends and where it starts between work and life. So I actually talk about life balance rather than work-life balance.
I like that.
But yeah, I think that I actually wrote something on that once. I don't think, Socrates stood around going, oh, did I have work-life balance? We didn't even know what sort of job he had. And that's the case in football. But when are you switching off?
Yeah.
When are you focusing? When are you present?
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that you find, and you'd know this from your career, and coaches would know this, are you sitting at home with your kids thinking about the game on Saturday? Or are you thinking about what happened at training? And I've got this new idea I keep saying to myself, wherever you are, be there.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
because if you're not going to be there, go back to the office and waste time.
Yeah.
Be where you are and be present with people that you're in, because I can guarantee you now. Okay. Oh, and I'll tell you this situation. When I had my heart attacks at Sydney FC, life goes on. You might think you're really important, but life really goes. And I think the club were very kind to me, but at the end of the day, I think it was Terry McFlynn, of course, because he's one of the best men in the world, came and visited me in hospital.
Yeah.
And Dave Mason, and that was it. And they're friends to this day.
Yeah.
But really, the others had life to go on.
Yeah.
Everyone's replaceable.
Of course.
So it's not worth killing yourself over. We're and I think as a coach, you need to keep that in perspective, and you'll be a better coach for it.
Yeah, no.
I'm not saying don't be passionate about what you do, but the more balanced you are as a human,
yeah,
the better you'll be as a coach. If you look at the great coaches throughout history, the really great coaches, and there's a lot you can read about, in the States, because a lot of those coaches from the US, they come from high school coaching, real coaching, into maybe college and then into the professionals. These people are much more than just a technical coach. I would advocate anyone to go and read some of the history, like of John Wooden, who was, voted the greatest basketball coach of last century. And just read, the guy was a philosopher, and you can learn so much about that from coaching. Please don't get so narrow focused on football, because I think there's actually a lot of sports that might do coaching better.
So, Craig, what then is coaching?
I think coaching is leadership, and I think really, okay, if I think the outcome from coaching, what you should look for is to think, okay, every person that comes under my regime I'm going to enhance them so that they get as close as possible to maximizing their potential. End of story. Yeah. That they come in, that they leave after they've had an experience with me, a better person and ultimately a better player. But you know what? A better person is maybe more important. And I don't care if it's children's football, adolescent football, and I don't care if that's professional football or you're working with national teams. Better people will be better players. And so I think that's what coaching is. It's leadership. And the coaches that have that mindset, they're the ones that are remembered for a long, long time. You look at Carlos Queiroz, you've got a whole nation that still adores him.
Yeah.
Still adores him, that long for him to come back because of the impact he had on their lives.
Yeah.
That's what it is. What impact are you having on the lives of the people that you're involved with now?
Yeah.
Because I can tell you, it's not all about winning, okay? It's what impact and long-term impact you're having on life. Like Gaz, can you name a coach that had an impact on your life? And I'm sure they're very close in your heart.
Oh, absolutely. It's just the way it goes. You from what you learn from them about the game, but before any of that, it's all about the relationship that they developed, the love, the trust, the care, how they help you grow and develop. They're the people that stand in our minds. Ronnie Smith for me was still is, a very, very close friend, but he played an enormous part in my life, my role as a coach, and the learning. And I couldn't agree more with you there.
Can I just say something on Ronnie Smith? Ronnie Smith is a fantastic example because, do you know what? You can't find a person that would say anything negative about Ronnie Smith. So what a life that is. That Ronnie Smith, Ronnie Smith, and another one we could throw in there is a Tom Samani.
Absolutely.
They just, when you see them, you just smile. Yep. So that is a life, because I think we all get to the end of life and we will ask ourselves the question, did I live a good life?
Absolutely.
And they would laugh their heads off if I said this. But Tommy Samani and Ronnie Smith would sit there and go, you know what, friggin' hell, I made the world a better place. And if you get 5 minutes with a Ronnie Smith or a Tom Samani, your life is going to be better. Yep. So that's how you want to be remembered. You might be another coach that won championships, but players don't remember you fondly.
Yeah.
You mightn't have treated everyone with respect and that sort of stuff, because at the end of the life, I think that's what we're going to ask ourselves. Happier players are always better players. Yeah, and the other thing that gets me about coaching, Gaz, I've got to say this, and this happens at the professional level, and you would have been around many tables that I've been around where I feel like saying, and it would be out of place, and I try not to ever be too out of place in environments going, hang on, I don't really get what you're saying that the player's rubbish. Because are you then in turn saying you're rubbish because aren't you a coach? And isn't a coach to make people better, but you're telling me they're no good? Oh, but then again, you signed them, but they're no good. Yeah. So think about that, coaches, when you're talking like that, and think, okay, it doesn't matter who it is. My job is to try and make them best. If they don't fit into your playing style and all that sort of stuff, that's a different matter.
Yeah.
But I think we owe humans to be treated with respect.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. Dr. Craig, we're on the downhill run here. I'm fairly sure I know what the answer to this question is going to be. So then, for you, what does success look like?
Oh, to be honest, really, success for me would be that my family and the people around me, said that, I helped make their world a better place. End of story. That's it. I keep asking myself, are you making the world a better place? Or this conversation, did you make it better or worse? But that would be it. It would be what legacy I leave, particularly for my children and my wife and my family, and then friends around that. But that's very. There's no point winning the world, Gaz, if I lose my family. No point at all. And so that's what success is for me. Being the best I can be. That's it. It's not winning championships or anything, because that's a journey.
Yeah.
Doing the best, along the journey, the game will take care of itself. It's all that journey. Have I done everything? It's like we go back to that Honduras. I remember, it was such a wonderful effort by all involved, and the logistics of it. But there was a moment in Honduras, because there was a lot on me from a sports science perspective, and I said to myself, and Ange, just wonderful, like really made me feel that he had his trust. But I did say to myself, hey mate, you better have this bloody well right. There's a bit like, riding on this. But I knew, I went back and I'd worked months at every intricate little detail. So yes, 0-0 at half time at ANZ Stadium, and we score 3 second half goals. You'd go, okay, what a great effort, and what a great thing from a sports science perspective. And, this all worked out perfectly. Yeah. However, I didn't need that result. Well, I did. If I'm honest, it was great for us after a combination of a lot of work and Absolutely. For Ange. But the thing was, I knew at the start of that game that we'd done everything we possibly could. And that wasn't just me. It was the staff that I was working with, Les Gellis and his staff. It was Luke Castley and all those guys, the senior management, and of course Ange and all his coaching staff, Pete Klamowski and Ante and Tony, every person involved, and the players involved and all that sort of stuff. So the journey, we'd done our very, very best. The outcome I can't control.
Yeah. No, I like that. I love the legacy piece and the work you're doing to help other people. In doing the research here, I bought Rebecca your book. You're now an author. You've got your own website. You're a content creator of some renown in terms of Twitter, Instagram. You're putting positive message up on a daily basis.
I write them to me, by the way. Those messages are to me. So because if I put it out there and I act like a jerk, people are going to go, "You're full of it." So it's a good way of controlling myself.
Yeah, I did say we called you the Mad Professor from time to time. So, Craig, all of that work is obviously, you're a professional. You're now a consultant in this high performance field, and obviously a part of that is making that bit work. But there's no doubt to me that you're living that legacy. You're coming through that. There is. You're a consultant. You're in business. You know, we all need to make a living and make a buck. But so much of that is free for people. The last time I checked, I think you had 166 episodes on the first of your podcast. You've now got a new podcast with Andy Harper that's up to 4 episodes old. There is so much that you're doing and giving back, investing back into the game. That's a wonderful, wonderful credit to you. So well done, mate. Congratulations, and keep that up.
Thanks, Gaz. I mean, it's just enjoyable, and I'm glad you mentioned Rebecca Cole, because what an athlete. I've got a big soft spot for these Olympic athletes in these sports that are big worldwide sports, and Rebecca Cole is some athlete that you're not going to actually say because she's your daughter, but I think there's a lot of athletes that we can learn a lot from, that I would love football players to maybe learn from, and to see the sacrifices that these athletes do. I think there's a lot we can learn from those. Has she read the book? That's what
I actually, it dawned on me. I haven't asked the doc. She took it away into the hub, and obviously,
yes, I remember. She told me. Yeah.
Southside Flyers went on to win their first championship, but I didn't. We haven't had the conversation. One of the things I do gift books a bit, but I don't gift them with an expectation that anyone's going to read them, gain any great wisdom from them. I just normally share things that from things that I've loved and read, and go, there's a blessing in here somewhere. So let's bless people.
I think. Can I just say one thing? I think coaches as well, please. And Gaz and I mean, you guys, we could do this. Like, you could do it actually. A list of really good books that you've read. I think reading far and wide will help you as a football coach. Ange was so well read.
Yeah.
And I think that really enhances your coaching.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. That's a good question. So what are you reading right now, Craig, Duncan?
I've probably got over on my thing, my book stand over there. I've probably got about 4 books I'm actually looking at. One that I'm reading about is like a biography of Leonardo da Vinci.
Yeah.
Which I find fascinating. Looking at, we think of him as just a painter, but he was an anatomist, and there was a number of things that he was doing. I'm also in the midst of, I read 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. I tend to read that once a year, and then I have all my philosophy stuff that I constantly like to read. So yeah, but they're the things I'm looking at the moment.
Love Stephen Covey's work. I've got a great piece of philosophy to read. It's just arrived this week. Andy Bernal's story, biography. I heard him talk about it. I'm really looking forward to that. What an incredible journey Birchie's had through football, both playing and the other side of it.
All the best to him with it.
Absolutely. Let's wrap this up then. Craig, this is a podcast about coaching. You're unique in that you're the first human performance manager, scientist that we've ever had on. In terms of all of those young sports scientists, human performance managers that are out there that want to make that journey or are beginning on their journey, what's one piece of wisdom that you could leave them with?
I think find yourself a really good mentor, and don't chase the dollars. I always say to people in this field, find out how much you need to live. That's okay. Go and make that money somewhere, wherever it is, and then find a good mentor and then go on and learn from them. It would be remiss of me not to talk about Jim Fraser, because I spent a lot of time with Jim Fraser, probably 15, 16, 17 years back, just learning from him. I would turn up, 3-4 days a week, and he got me back to training as a goalkeeper and nearly killed me. But, just what I learned from him back in those days, and that was just all off my own. I sculpted out time to go and do that. That's the best advice. People talk about, these unpaid internships are negative. No, they're not, if they're with the right people. Absolutely. If you can find the right mentor in the right place, and don't think you've got to go and do a professional team. So the fact is, if you go and help in a professional team, you might be picking up cones. If you work for the under 15s or the under 13s at an NPL club, you could have that entire team to work with, and you're going to learn your trade. You've got to learn how to conduct yourself around players, how to manage a group, all those basic things to learn the language and the culture of football. And so I'm a big believer in, go and do your time at places. It takes time. Things don't happen overnight, but find yourself good mentors. I'm always open, give me a call if you want any advice. There's no problem with that, anyone. But that's what my advice to any young sports scientists.
Never mind about the sports science bit. Ralph Barber and I are both giving you a call this week. You have helped us maximise our potential today. Thank you, Dr. Craig Duncan. It's been an absolute honour and a privilege to have your conversation today, mate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thanks always.
Cheers.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Football Coaching Life podcast, brought to you proudly by Football Coaches Australia and Making Media the Podcast Professionals. If you've enjoyed today's conversation with Dr. Craig, pop on over to footballcoachesoz.org.au. You can buy a membership, you can renew a membership. Hey, you can have a look at our new website and maybe learn some things. You have a great day in football.